Pastor Hanley, how are you? How are you today, man? It's Thursday right now.
Yeah, I'm doing well. I mean, things are opening up again a lot more. So we've been back in the office. So I just came from church. We had an English pastoral team meeting, just a brief one, about an hour and a half. Finished that and drove home, and now I'm on the call with you.
Well, thanks for taking the call. I Next week's going to be hard, and I don't know what next month is going to look like. I wanted to make sure we do something here because I feel like there's a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah.
Are you okay if we just head into it?
Yeah, let's jump in.
I saw you on the internet. You were in an interview panel for Sola Network talking about the future of the Chinese Heritage Church. So I want to interview you about your interview. How was that experience?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, if that wasn't initiated by me, so props to Pastor Steve Chang and Ben Pun for thinking, okay, we should put together a video that talks about the Chinese church. And if you notice, three of us are basically affiliated with some form of Sola leadership. So we
Right.
know that it was a California centric. We try to reach for the low hanging fruits. So it was easy for us with Ben and Casey both being on the conference team, and then me representing the Sola Council, the three Chinese guys, and then we were able to get Joey pretty easily. You know, he's in San Francisco, but state of California, easy to stick in the time zone. I mean, the thing with pastors is that everyone's so busy, so it's hard to really nail down a time where we could all just record uninterrupted. And so we recorded one afternoon. Yeah.
Do you like doing these things, or do you feel pressured to like give a good answer when you're on a panel? I feel that, especially because of the topic. I mean, you sort of went a little bit meta talking about FCBC Walnut. At one point, you said we were going to change our name. We're not going to change our name, just for anybody who's listening. But yeah, how does it make you feel being on those panels?
You know, I enjoy it. I try to represent. You know, we know that when we're on those panels that we're not going to represent everyone, equally. I mean, the Chinese church is so diverse, and we're unique in our own regard, being English anchored. So I know that when we speak on behalf of the Chinese church, we're not speaking on behalf of every context. So it's always challenging, but we try to do what we can, and with Sola, a lot of the representation in the past has been very Korean American driven. I think all of the leadership knows that, and they've been making all the effort to broaden out and expand to a broader spectrum of Asian Americans. And so, Chinese Americans, we don't go on platforms and talk about the Chinese church too often. I know there's different podcasts, there's different state groups that are gathered and they talk. So I think that was the experience. To answer your question, like, I would much rather do a panel. I would much rather do an interview, especially after COVID, rather than talking to my phone, in isolation, or recording a video by myself in front of my computer. I hope we never have to do that again. I mean, I don't mind doing it in the service of the church, but if you notice, no devotions, right? There's no more video devotions for the time being, and I think because we have something else to focus on.
I want to ask you one question about the interview, and you were talking about, I guess, journeying and processing about what it means to figure out what it is to be Chinese, a Chinese American or a North American pastor. Do you know what I'm talking about? You were talking about
Yes,
majority culture.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So did you figure it out yet? When do you think you're going to figure out like what it means to be a Chinese pastor? I mean, Hanley, you've been a pastor at FCBC Walnut for quite some time. Should I expect you to figure it out?
I don't know. I think it's one of those things where if your identity is in Christ, and if you don't have a negative attitude towards your own God-given ethnicity and culture, then naturally, the more you become like Christ, the more the more God willing, the more you will be complete in terms of who God has planned you to be. But yeah, I mean, I think my experience is very different from each and every Asian American pastor that I've spoken to, or I started using the term Asian North American because I think it's in that preaching book that was written for Asian Americans, but it's also, we always want to include Canada, because there's plenty of people just like us, second or third generation Asian heritage individuals in ministry, and they're not technically Asian American, they're Asian Canadian, so Asian North American. But yeah, it's been a journey. You can press in more into that. I mean, I can talk about it if you want, but it's up to you.
Well, how about this? You said that you're processing this and you're trying to figure this out for yourself as the pastor. But how about for me as an attender, as a member of FCBC Walnut? Should I be thinking critically and having some real self-reflection about what it means for me to be Chinese American?
I think your first priority is to wake up. I mean, I don't think you wake up every day and just be like, oh, what does it mean for me to be Chinese? My purpose in life is to be a Chinese American. I don't think any of us would want to do that, but we wake up, and as Christians, as people who profess to be disciples of Jesus, then the question is like, how do I live for Christ? And then when it comes to our Asian identity, it becomes a matter of stewardship, right? Because it doesn't make us better than other ethnicities because we're Asian. Discovering our identity doesn't make us better Christians. It doesn't elevate us over other ethnicities. All it does is it helps you to understand, okay, as an Asian American, there are certain things that culturally that are maybe biased against me in certain spheres, where I have a disadvantage, right? That's not always true for everyone, but there's going to be certain fields where you're like, okay, because I'm Asian American, I'm not going to have a cultural advantage. Understandably, right? But there's other areas where you're like, because I'm Asian American, if I am comfortable in who God had created me to be, if I'm not constantly questioning myself, if I'm not trying to be, let's just say, we grew up in America, so it's like I'm not trying to purposely be white. I love white Americans, but I'm not trying to be white. I'm not trying to be black. I'm trying to be who Christ created me to be. Once you're comfortable with who you are in your own skin, whether you have an accent or not, regardless of what the color of your skin is, once you're comfortable in your skin, then you can begin to say, okay, Christ has given me a certain identity. Now, what does it mean to steward that? And I do think as Asian Americans, there's certain advantages that you can use for the sake of the gospel. And that's going to differ based on everybody's context.
Well, I appreciated the interview. It's available at sola.network. It's called The Future of the Chinese Heritage Church. So Hanley, thanks for doing that and sharing it with us. We got to move on to the next topic for time, but maybe we'll talk about this again someday. The next thing I want to talk to you about is there was an announcement by the CDC today. Did you see it? They said that
about the face mask.
Yeah, they said that masks are allowed, I guess, to be off indoors in certain situations. So once again, I'm here asking you, what's the plan moving forward for FCBC Walnut? Does this affect our reopening plans?
Yeah, at this point, we're scheduled to reopen June 20th, right, which is Father's Day. I think we'll need that time to get ready. And when we're talking about reopening, we've already been reopened with outdoor services ever since August. So we're really talking about having a service indoors with whoever is comfortable indoors. And when it comes to face masks, we are going to follow that recommendation of keeping face masks until we have further, maybe if this is what came out from the CDC, maybe California, the guidance will make an adjustment. And so that's our plan. We're going to have the outdoor courtyard available for those who want to sit in chairs and watch outdoors because you're more comfortable. We'll have the indoor open. I don't know how much distance there will be between each chair, but face masks will be required, but you can sing indoors. The whole service will be indoors. And then we hope to try to maintain our quality of live stream. If we can do it, we have a great team. We'll live stream that, for those who are still watching from home. And if that's the case, then anybody can pull in to the parking lot with their vehicle and remain in their vehicle and pull up their device and also watch it from the parking lot. I think the difference is that we probably need all the parking spaces, so you won't have that extra space next to your car that's coned off possibly.
Right.
But indoors, I think the hard part is that in California, it's not legal to ask people like who is vaccinated and who is not. So we're not able to, I mean, you can ask like as friends, but we're not officially able to ask our pastors, have you been vaccinated or have you not, or our employees. We're not able to ask Sunday school teachers, hey, you're going to be working with children, we want you to be vaccinated. We're not allowed to require that. And we're not even allowed to ask, like, are you vaccinated or not? Unless it's an anonymous survey, I guess. And so because we won't know who is fully vaccinated, who's not, and because we have children among us who by June 20th, they won't have vaccinations for that young of children. And because we know that there will be unvaccinated people among us, that I think it's safer to keep the mask on until we are instructed otherwise. Now, obviously for our church, we're going to continue to try to, have our ears open, and we're open to learn. But that's our plan right now. And obviously we have like I'm not the authority. So we do have a team that discusses this and plans, and it's a reopening task force. And I think we'll lean on their counsel to us as well.
Do you think that, I feel that we're at this junction where things are moving pretty fast, and eventually, yeah, like things could go back to being close to normal. Do you anticipate having any fond memories or looking back at this moment in time as, oh, those are good times, but God got us through it? Like, are you going to be fond of these times, or are you just going to think those are horrible times? Like, what's your outlook on this, do you think?
Well, I'll look back and say they were challenging times, but there's going to be a lot of good that comes out of it, and some of that is yet to be seen because we haven't fully reopened yet. So looking back on how God caused us to focus on our priorities, He stripped away the large programming. I mean, we're a relatively medium to, I would say, large size church, and I think it just, a lot of the noise, a lot of the traditions, and a lot of the ministries that we just ran because we've been running them for 30 years. I mean, they were forced to be put on pause, and we got to re-examine, how we're aligning all of our ministries with our vision. We see how important relationships are. It's not that we never value relationships, but now we see that, wow, relationships are so important. The prayer is so important. Church unity, and so there's a lot of good that's going to come out of this. And I think there'll be some fond memories of, like, remember when we worshiped outdoors and the weather wasn't too bad and it was kind of nice, Yeah, so I think there will be some fond memories of this time, but definitely a challenging season.
And just to be clear, I know you understand me where I'm coming from, but I'm talking about FCBC Walnut as an institution, like how we as an institution are going through this, not necessarily as individuals. I think for individuals, everybody had a different experience with this, and so I don't want to speak on behalf of the individuals at our church. So Hanley, I got to move on to the next topic. That we're moving fast because we're crunched on time today. But we had, what is it? A family dedication service? Is that what it's called? Where
the Baptist version of infant baptism. Only we don't baptize because they're not believers yet, right? So it's just a family.
Right.
You're dedicating the child, but you're dedicating the parent. It's a parent dedication.
Yeah. And so I want to ask you really quickly, how did you feel going up there and dedicating your family? Like, do you feel that it's a little bit redundant because you're a pastor and you're like, oh, I gotta be on this side now, from the dad side? Like, how do you feel first as a pastor doing it, and then as a dad doing it?
I felt encouraged. I feel good about it. Like I see my role as a pastor. I'm one of the members of the church. My spiritual gifts happen to be in the gifts that fall under the practice of pastor. And it just so happened that the church feels that I should do it full time. And so that's how I look at it. And so I'm one of the members of the church, and hopefully my kids get saved. And so I hope that the church holds us accountable and supports us, and as we are also able to hold other families accountable and support them. So we had a parent dedication when it was our daughter Haley, and we dedicated her. And then for Micah, we dedicated him. Or technically, we call it parent dedication because it's the parents that are making the commitment to be the primary disciple makers, in our children's life, to prioritize Christ or pushing them towards the gospel, right? Like the Holy Spirit has to save them. So, I loved it. It's fun.
What does it mean for me to hold you accountable, or anybody else at church to hold you accountable as a father to your children? Like, what does that even look like? What am I supposed to say? Pastor Hanley, you're not taking care of your kids, or Pastor Hanley, you're not bringing them to church. Like, what should I be looking out for? What should I be aware of?
You mean, what does it look like for every parent that does the dedication, or what does it look like specifically, like how a member would talk to a pastor?
Yeah, like how a member would talk to a pastor. I guess you could say, like, for me, because we're friends or whatever. But yeah, like you did it in front of the whole church. So you're saying, church, hold me accountable.
Yeah, this would be great. I mean, this is a little tongue in cheek, but I'm not ashamed of it. I mean, I would say, the members of the church should come to me and say, Pastor, let's not have so many meetings. Let's not have so many meetings on Sunday afternoon and Saturday so you can spend time with your kids, or Pastor, what are you doing, attending every single event? Like, don't your kids need you on Wednesday night? I hope you guys hold me accountable that I spend time with my kids, being there as the father figure and not just diving into ministry. I think, I think it's if there's anything questionable, if people see that I'm neglecting my children. I mean, I know my weaknesses is to tend to prioritize ministry and work over family. I mean, that's how I'm wired. Is I love my ministry. I love my ministry work that's assigned to me. Like, I really like doing the work of the ministry. And honestly, sometimes, we struggle because people can say that. I think a lot of pastors can relate to this, where sometimes people say you're a better pastor to certain church members or to the church than you are a spiritual leader in the home, right? Because we spend so much time, pastoring. Plus in our day, like as our kids grow up, I think we really have to be there to walk with our kids and to show them our faith and why it's critical. Because if our kids are in public school or any type of social event and someone says, hey, that's your dad on that YouTube, we're going to cancel you. So like, our kids will get canceled, man. Our kids will get canceled, right? In the society. And so could you imagine if like one of like, if my kids feel like I neglect them for the sake of ministry, and somehow one of their friends at school gets a recording of a YouTube where your dad went on a pulpit and preached on traditional views on gender and marriage. I mean, how that's going to come off. I think we're well aware of how much more important it is for pastors to spend that extra time, with our kids. And that would apply, I think, to every church member, but even more so if we're leading, in the church.
That's really good, man. And I will keep that in mind in the future. I agree with you. I think we got to pay for our kids. It's gonna be tough days ahead. Last one, I think, and then we'll get ready to go. You said something during your prayer. I almost stumbled a little bit because you said, I don't know the exact wording. Let me pull up what I think was the exact wording here.
It's online somewhere.
Yeah, it's online.
That's a horrible thing about being online.
You said babies are angels that look down on us symbolically. Give or take, that's what you said. I think you said the babies that are in heaven, they're looking down on us as angels symbolically, along those lines. Somebody can find the quote in there. You know what I'm talking about, though.
Yeah, let's just chalk that up to anthrop or like kind of a. Let's just say that's a symbolic, kind of a nice thing to say, a sentimental thing. You got to give the context for that. I mean, we're praying for mothers who suffered from miscarriage on Mother's Day.
Right.
We're praying for maybe mothers who had aborted their child prior to coming to Christ.
Okay.
And so when you're talking about aborted fetuses or children that were born, they're born without life, or they miscarry, which means they pass away, then in some way they go from, we have to believe that since God created them, that God was with them. So they go from being with God, never experiencing human life. Well, I guess this is a certain category, and then they go straight into the presence of God. So I don't know. I mean, I didn't script every bit of the prayer. So I think in the moment, I just refer to them as like angels looking down on us from heaven. Theologically, that's probably incorrect. Babies are not angels. Babies are babies, that have passed away. Though when believers who are parents see their children in heaven, they will be in resurrected bodies eventually at one point. So not sure how that's going to be. But then there's also probably the parents who have lost their children before the age of accountability. And our hope is also that those kids would be in heaven, right? So that was the context of it. So probably theologically incorrect.
That is the correct context, and I'm just giving you a hard time, man. I know where you're coming from, and I appreciate the prayer. I think it was a serious prayer where you tried to pray for all of the women and that deal with these type of things, and I think it was a necessary thing to do, and I appreciate the sentiment that you were coming from, man. But I also appreciate the fact that I can be real with you about theological accuracy and discuss things on a more, I guess, correct level. But yeah, thank you, man. Thank you. Hanley, that's it, man. That's it for today.
Good.
Who knows the next time we'll be able to do this, but I look forward to it, and I'll see you on Sunday or something, man. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, no problem. All right.